Hello everyone and welcome again to the Librarius. This is your captain speaking. I am taking a break from the philosophy series this week to reflect on my reflections on the new Space Marine book and how it affects my favorite faction, of course, the Blood Angels. Now I got the new book in hand finally, and I've been looking through it and looking through the different things and trying to think of what I'd want to put in an army list if coronavirus would let me out to play. So with that in mind, I just kind of wanted to throw some of my ideas out and, in a rare show of optimism, talk about the things that I like that we gained from being roped into Codex Space Marines versus the things that we lost in the meantime while we wait for our supplement. So with that in mind, a big thank you again to Reese and the folks over at Frontline Gaming for letting me throw all this up on their website. Go check it out in the article there, which is more or less what this is. And if you prefer reading to listening, that's the place to go. All right, with that out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about some of my big initial takeaways. In my last review of the interim rules, I talked about a lot of the changes to the Sanguinary Priests that I really like, and I still really like them. In fact, I like them better. And while I remain grateful that the Sanguinary Priest with Jump Hack managed to dodge the Legends bullet back when the first wave happened, the upgrades and the profile itself didn't really survive the journey intact. But back in 3rd edition, it was pretty common to find a Blood Angel player running a Jump Pack Sanguinary Priest with double Lightning Claws or Power Sword or whatever that was. You know, whatever suited them, really, whatever they wanted. Nowadays, though, they just get a Chainsword. It's a pistol, chainsword, that's all you can get because that's all that comes in the kit. I suppose we should just be grateful that they allow us to have Sanguinary Priests with jump packs at all, but I kind of miss the option of creating someone who's a little bit more of a combat beast. Well, now that I mention that, he has an Astartes Chainsword, which makes him eligible to replace it with a nifty little relic called the Teeth of Terra. All of a sudden, the Sanguinary Priest is looking a little bit more beefy and killy than he was before. The Teeth of Terra adds 3 additional attacks instead of 1 from the Chainsword. It adds 1 to the Strength and has an AP of -2 and 2 damage each, which means with his base 3 attacks, +3 from this, +1 on the charge, and possibly +1 for the Assault Doctrine, this guy's looking pretty tasty. He can engage a full squad of Space Marines and realistically take them down quite a bit on his own. In addition, he'd be really good at going out and soloing little hordes of things like, say, Rippers or Nurglings with his multiple damage weapon and his ability to just kind of take on cheap units like that really simply. I think that this is a really good relic for him. And there are also fewer relics that you have to worry about as auto includes in your army. So right now, I feel like the unique banner that goes on the Sanguinary Ancient is kind of the must take if you're bringing anything with jump packs. But with some of the improvements to characters like Dante and Astarath, Lamardes, all of those characters, you know, they can't have relics anyway. So if you've got a free relic slot, may as well plug it on this guy and watch him go to town on stuff. And since he has the Apothecary keyword, he's also eligible to be upgraded to a Chief Apothecary, which is one of the new things that Blood Angels didn't have access to before. This is fantastic because now he'll get to use his Narthesium twice, plus he has the 6+ Feel No Pain aura bubble. I think that this character crosses that line from decent support character to excellent support character if you make use of all of these rules. So I'm more excited than I have in a long time to feel the Sanguinary Priest. And maybe I just stick him with the Chainsword depending on the other relics and the command points that I have. But maybe not. He's flexible, and I like that. So yeah, now I'm looking at maybe converting up a cool Sanguinary Priest with jump pack with a huge old Chainsword to represent the Teeth of Terra. Because if I needed anything else, it was a 5th or a 6th Sanguinary Priest with jump pack. I suppose you'd have to ask my wife about that. And she'd probably be the first one to buy it for me. Let's be real here. So with that out of the way, you know, Sanguinary Priest, kind of the standout winner here. The next one I'm going to talk about might surprise you just a little bit because I was really down on the Librarians and what we lost as Blood Angels Librarians with the interim rules and just using the Codex powers. But after thinking about it a little bit, I actually found some things that I like better. I'll admit, losing the Blood Angel specific psychic powers was a bit of a blow. That said, taking the time to read through the other Codex powers, I found some new ways to enjoy bringing my Psykers into games of 40k. I initially said that the Sanguinary Priest would probably take over the role of a librarian completely. Now I'm not so sure. Now I think I want both. So yes, Shield of Sanguinius is gone, which was one of the nice buffs that I'd throw out on a unit like, say, Death Company or Sanguinary Guard when I knew they'd be going up against something with a lot of really high AP attacks. Having a invulnerable save is a huge deal in the right circumstance. So with Shield of Sanguinius gone, there's Psychic Fortress in the Space Marine book. Now, Psychic Fortress is actually better than Shield of Sanguinius. It's an aura ability for a 5++ instead of just giving it to one unit. That's a really good deal, especially for just a warp charge value of 6. And yes, we don't have Unleash Rage anymore, which was a nice way to get even more attacks on a unit. But now we have access to Veil of Time. And Veil of Time is cool because it allows for some additional combat support. We get to reroll charge distances and strike first in combat for the effective unit. Now the wording on that's very clear. It says they strike first. So you can reroll charge distances and then this unit fights first. So, kind of keep that in the back of your head there. But even with all that, we are the ones who want to fight first. And with our +1 to charge, or even with maybe one of the litanies from chaplains, we're going to want that ability to get into combat and then swing first with a unit and then elect a unit to swing first in combat before someone can interrupt. At the very least, I think that that's a really good support ability for all of us combat chapters. And then it's nice to have something like Null Zone in your back pocket in case you go up against somebody who has a lot of invulnerable saves. Going up against someone like, say, Chaos Demons, or if you're going up against other Space Marines and you're worried about maybe some Assault Terminators or Blade Guard veterans, if you can shut off that invulnerable save, life gets a lot easier. Now, I'm still pretty down on the state of Mephiston, but his replacement, the Librarian Dreadnought, is in really good shape. Perhaps not as mobile as he used to be with the Wings of Sanguinius power, the Librarian Dreadnought puts out a ridiculous amount of damage in close combat. He's got damage 3 on his fists, which he'll always have at least 4 attacks with. On the first round of combat, he'll have 5, and then he has 1 extra attack that's D3 plus 3. Now, he hits on 3s where he used to hit on 2s, and we've talked about that before, but you can buff that with a couple of different abilities. There's the aura from the standard that comes with the Sanguinary Ancient, which I think is going to show up in pretty much every Blood Angels list. That gives a +1 to hit. All of those things can be mitigated fairly well. So he also has that built-in -1 to damage taken. He's a character with less than 10 wounds, so he can't be targeted. And he has the Librarian keyword, which means he's eligible to be upgraded to Chief Librarian. A Chief Librarian Dreadnought. I hadn't really thought of that before. I kind of like that. Give him the Biomantic Sarcophagus Relic, and he'll get rerolls on the now 3 powers and 2 denies that he's got. He can fill more Giant Stompy Shoes with the Wisdom of the Ancient stratagem, so he can get an aura that will be either a Lieutenant's aura or a Captain's aura. That's a lot of things he can do all at the same time. I think that that's totally worth it, and I'm definitely going to be bringing more Librarian Dreadnoughts. I definitely think that these guys are going to be a priority for enemy character assassination things. I really expect them, if we get some good powers in the supplement when it comes out, to be a mainstay if Mephiston doesn't get anything special. So with the Librarian love out of the way, I couldn't help myself. Let's just talk about some of the quality of life improvements. Right now, we have built-in access to all of the Codex Space Marines datasheets right out of the gate. So over the last couple of decades that I've played as a Blood Angels player, I remember really well just years and years of being kind of a left-out afterthought to the release of new models and kits from the Space Marine range. Let's list off a few: Thunderfire Cannons, Grav Weapons, Storm Talons, Centurions, Ironclad Dreadnoughts. That's just the tip of the iceberg so far as the things that we didn't get before that we have now. And some of the things came later. I mean, grav weapons eventually got kind of roped into what we were able to do. But again, it was always, we were kind of like an afterthought. And there are still a few things that are restricted here that are among the unique chapters. I think that's the right balance to take when it comes to giving character. It would have been another thing as well if there had been like a specific reason listed out in the old books that justified why some of the stuff shared and some of it wasn't shared. You know, the Blood Angels had that bad relationship with Mars because of the ball predator thing, but that didn't really get into the specifics of why they did or didn't have certain things. And then there was that weird period where we had the Storm Raven and nobody else did. So all of these holes kind of created gaps in a chapter's viability. And now we have more creative freedom to find good combos for our army. I have to read all of it again just so that I know what else to bring. I think that that's great. And getting back to some of the other quality of life stuff, what about stratagems? I mean, even with supplements like Blood of Baal that helped fill gaps between books and releases, there were still things that were missing between Codex Space Marines and the Blood Angels that didn't make sense. And think about Orbital Bombardment, which was given only to Codex Space Marines and a couple of the other ones. I think the thing with that was they were just determined to give it to everybody who wasn't Dante for some reason. It made no sense. So we now have access to this, and beyond that, it's the same wording for everybody now. And that's important. So for our opponents now, no one has to really differentiate between some of the Codex powers or some of the Codex abilities, stratagems, whatever, being worded differently between books because of either an oversight or a change in direction. And think about the chapter master rule wording that Dante suffered under for all of 8th edition that was fixed in all of the other books. Beyond that, there's a lot of "and" involved in the new books. And what I mean by that is that we have access to our Warlord trait and the Space Marine Warlord traits, at least so far. And as long as you aren't a named character, because they have to take the chapter specific one. It's going to take some time for me to get used to all the stuff that I didn't have before that I have now while I wait for the new stuff to come out. I'll have some thoughts about the supplements themselves and what perhaps my concerns or what I'm looking forward to once the first batch is released. They just announced the Space Wolf and the Death Watch books are going up for pre-order this coming Saturday, and I'm pretty excited for that because I want to see how well they treat stuff. My initial take on it isn't super hot because the first Primaris unique unit for the Space Wolves, the kit is barely distinguishable from the Reaver kit, and Reavers are considered one of the worst options to take in the Space Marine book right now. So we'll have to see how that pans out. Now, I don't have any lists ready. I'm still wrestling with a couple of different ideas and concepts. Mostly it has to do with the secondaries, you know, when it comes to the GT pack. When it comes to like narrative play, open play, I'll bring whatever and can have a good time. But so far as competitive play goes, I'm building a couple of different list philosophies here where I have my Golden Host philosophy and my Black Rage philosophy, because I'm finding it impossible to bring both at the same time. However, I'm also looking at what I see as a pattern in GW's releases where we have things like where it started with Gaz, but now it's moved on to things like the Nightbringer and the other Catan shards, is that there are some models that you can only damage so much in a single phase. So as a list builder, I start thinking about, well, do I have the ability to damage one of these in multiple phases? Or am I just going to end up having to run around it and hope that, you know, it doesn't get through my sacrificial chaff so that I can perform the mission well? I don't like the idea of not being able to touch something. So while I do generally tend to go all in on a Space Marine combat list with my Blood Angels, because that's what we're good at, I also, on the other hand, am looking at units like that and thinking, I can see that happening for the Eldar Avatar. I can see that happening for a bunch of different monsters and creatures. Imagine if that happened, for example, to the Swarm Lord or other units, you know, Hive Tyrants and things like that. There are tons of big, angry monsters that if we put a wounds per phase cap on, any army like mine that has an overwhelming single phase is, I mean, it's not going to work. It's not going to work strategically. So I think that that's one of the subtle ways that GW is trying to teach us to diversify our list a little bit. So I'm trying to get ahead of that game, but it's hard because even as I want to include more ways to do things in my list, I'm also just really struggling with the idea of taking things that perhaps rules-wise aren't necessarily as efficient right now. So I'll come up with a few and let you guys know. In the meantime, I hope you enjoyed this little rare optimistic video of mine, and I want to know what you think. Do you think that the interim Blood Angels are just unplayable until we have our supplement? Or do you think that there are some things here that I missed, some benefits and things that could really make us swing for the fences? Let me know. Also, if you like the video, please like the video, comment on it, subscribe to the channel, share with your friends. I want to get as many people in this conversation as possible. With that out of the way, I really appreciate everybody sticking to the end of this video. I appreciate all my new subscribers and everybody who's helping to grow the channel so far. I look forward to the next one. Cheers.